kind of thing. All right, we're going to get to Brad Crawford
Green bread
for his second time here at Inside the Gamecocks show. Brad, how are you, buddy?
Hey, man, thanks for having me today. I was listening to y'all's weather discussion. Let me tell you, JC, some of our most clicked content during the season is weather delays, what channel the game's on. I mean, lightning delays. You know, we might see that Saturday night at Williams-Brice.
Yeah, I would, you know, the only thing that I would be probably not happy about would be if they call it off, kind of like Florida did a few years ago against Idaho. Right. I mean, that could have cost Will Muschamp his job. Really,
I think it'll be fine. Yeah, they're gonna play the game.
Yeah, I think so too. It's like 20-30%, and rain's not bad. It is lightning that can kind of get you off. But yeah, you think about that Will Muschamp year at Florida, his last year. They canceled the game against, I think, Idaho because of lightning. So they had 11 games. And then they lost unbelievably to LSU and South Carolina. and then he didn't coach the bowl. So he would have been sitting on 9 wins maybe that year. Had 3 unbelievable things, and then the bowl game.
There's a reason SEC head coaches schedule, 3 non-conference games where they're double-digit favorites in. Like you need those wins in the SEC.
There's no doubt about it. Well, Brad, first of all, I saw some of your reaction yesterday to the NIL announcement. Yep. And I also know that a lot of Gamecock fans, which is 98% of our audience, there's a couple of clubs of people that tune in and just to make fun of us. But so everybody knows the tweet you put out over the summer about awesome things coming, revolutionary, all that. Let's just get this out in the open. Yesterday's announcement was huge. That's not necessarily what you were tweeting about, though.
It's not. That's part of it. That's just the tip of the iceberg, man. I won't reveal in today's show, but there's a lot. I mean, a lot of big things coming at South Carolina, man. Like I mentioned in July, coming out of media days, it's a great time to be a Gamecock fan right now. I think the university has a lot of forward-thinking employees, very, very innovative folks like Chance Miller. So, he deserves a lot of credit, though. By the way, I saw his spot on y'all's show yesterday, and just the praise he should receive for this. Being someone who's been ahead of the curve. Through this NIL partnership, South Carolina sort of becomes a facilitator of sorts. For prospective student athletes to kind of build their brands from a marketing standpoint.
I think so. And nowadays, right, Phil, that's huge, right?
I mean, it's driving a lot of things for sure, especially, basketball and baseball, I think, are really big. People always go to football to start, but it's huge in basketball and baseball right now.
I think so.
Put us ahead of the game, man.
Yeah, I was going to say, I just think recruiting has just significantly changed in the NIL era. I mean, not only are you recruiting a player now, you're also sort of buying into that player's brand in terms of some of these high-profile 4- and 5-star guys. There's a reason elite football players sign with Bama, because they're expecting a return on their investment a few years later in the NFL draft. So now at South Carolina, you have a fully staffed group that's going to help you land these NIL deals in college and sort of build your social profile in your career that, makes you more marketable down the line for future earnings.
Absolutely. And you look at a guy like Nicholas Harbor, who's a dual sport athlete, who I keep saying he's going to be in the Olympics. I would be surprised if he wasn't. At some point, I mean, nobody's that fast and that big, man. Hussein Bolt's probably the only other guy that compares. And you want that marketability. I mean, and it's not even just about football for him. It's about, an Olympic sport. So I thought it was a gigantic move. I think that it's one that really can help. And like you mentioned, Bama, they sell that, Brad, down there better than anybody they have for 15 years. Here's here's where we could get you. Nick Saban always talks about creating value for his players. We like to create value. That's what he says. And South Carolina's well on their way to doing that. Well, you're a shoe guy, so I'll ask you about this other topic here.
I am.
So
I do not have any Nike or Jumpman scoop.
I know there's no scoop there. Your opinion about the shoe deal. I was not anti Under Armour when they switched from Russell, right? Because they were with Russell. And Spurrier didn't even like Russell. Spurrier got there. Actually, Spurrier's first year, they wore Reebok cleats. He's like, we're not wearing these Russell cleats. We're just wearing Reebok, And then they got the Under Armour deal. I thought it was fine at the time. I've grown sort of – I've kind of gotten over Under Armour a little bit. But where do you think they should go apparel-wise? Because that's, from what my understanding, they're not in a big rush to end that contract, but it will come up soon. And when that happens, there's a good chance they switch brands.
I mean, if you go, JC, to any high school recruiting event, any Elite 11, go to any high school game in South Carolina on Friday nights, I mean, you're looking at probably 10% of teams are still with Under Armour. It's just a brand that, in my opinion, it's not dying. Obviously, Under Armour is still profitable. As you mentioned, it's a very lucrative deal right now for South Carolina, but jumping into Adidas or Nike or even Jumpman, Oklahoma, Florida, Michigan, those three schools are sort of Jumpman's flagship along with UNC, but that's a recruiting tool. We talk about uniforms and helmets making a difference and facilities. I've written a ton the last 5 or 6 years on facilities and how big of an impact that is. But, also it's what you wear on your feet. Gamecock recruits walk into that football building. They see 3 or 4 models that have Under Armour on, but just imagine, the impact of, seeing a Jumpman on your shirt or, wearing some of Nike's Vapor cleats. Oregon, by the way, is debuting a new cleat Saturday against Georgia that is just, millions of impressions, and viewers are going to see that and think, man, Oregon looks awesome this weekend.
Yeah, that's Oregon's done a great, almost better than any other. I kind of like what Adidas has been doing too with some of the uniforms. I thought it was actually during the Muschamp era when it hit me. I was like, well, Will has kind of this philosophy that the kids get to pick the uniforms, and I was like, well, that's great. It's kind of like an Oregon type. We're going to have a different uniform every week, and you got 2 primary colors or whatever. I was like, super, but then like with what they did with it, I was like, all you're basically doing is mixing and matching colors. You look like Texas Tech half the time.
Yeah, and South Carolina sort of became everyone was waiting for a uniform reveal on Thursday afternoon rather than are they going to win the game Saturday?
Yeah. Exactly, and that's what they Shane Beamer's changed. According to our friends at the Spurs Up show, by the way, garnet jerseys, white helmets, white pants. So just your normal Gamecock home uniform. So how do you see this game this weekend, Brad? Georgia State, South Carolina. Then I'm going to get your take on the rest of the SEC games, starting with tonight in the Vols, and if they will hang 75 plus on or 77 plus on Ball State. But go ahead with Georgia State. I mean, I kind of see it as a tough Group of 5 team coming to Columbia.
Yeah, this is a team that could certainly win the Sun Belt. Could probably win 9 games this year after a loss Saturday night. But this is a team that likes to run the football. I think every analyst has probably said this all throughout the week. Georgia State was 70-30 run pass last season. Likes to slow the game down a bit. That's Sean Elliott's MO. He likes to lean on that offensive line. Several top-end running backs back that I think that they have 3 guys that rushed for at least 550 last season, including Jam, who was a safety at South Carolina a few years ago. But I think it comes down to the Gamecocks being able to control the line of scrimmage. If the front 7 plays well, I don't see how Georgia State's going to be able to sustain drives in this game. That being said, South Carolina did struggle against the run at times last season. And like I said, Georgia State has that veteran backfield. But I think if Georgia State's able to, get 5 to 6 yards of play on first down, then that's the kind of danger zone the Gamecocks don't want to be in, where you're just sort of battling possessions and needing to score touchdowns when you touch the ball. But I think Marcus Satterfield can go somewhat vanilla Saturday night and still win this game. And I know 12 points is sort of a weird line, but I think Gamecocks at least win by a touchdown and get into week 2 against Arkansas with not a lot of tape being shown.
I think, that's huge right there. Carolina too, when it's a 12-point spread, I think Auburn and North Carolina both last year were 12-point spreads. So maybe that's a lucky number that doesn't. Okay, starting tonight, you got a couple of SEC games, Ball State, Tennessee. I think the only question is, how many points will Tennessee score? I think if you're Tennessee and you only get to like 35 or 40, their fans may be a little disgruntled, disappointed. Of course, they got Pitt the next week. Pitt plays tonight at Heinz Field against West Virginia. And so that's interesting. Missouri, Louisiana Tech's the other one. And then you have a full weekend of games. How do you see some of these SEC games and really around the country, Brad? You cover the whole country, kind of play it out. What intrigues you about the schedule for the weekend?
Yeah, man, I'll give you a lock of the week first. Arkansas -6. I like Arkansas a lot. I've been high on the Hogs since, before spring practice when I knew Jefferson would be a developed quarterback, a year later in the Kendall Breyer system. Getting Drew Sanders from Alabama. Look, he's a former 5-star signing who backed up Dallas Turner and Will Anderson. I got to play in front of those two guys, right? He's going to be a splashy linebacker at Arkansas. Really, really one of the SEC's most impactful transfers, in my opinion. So I like Arkansas big over Cincinnati. Cincinnati had 9 NFL draft picks, school record.
Yeah.
Luke Fickell, man, he's able to sign 3-star guys and develop these players into NFL draft picks. So that's a guy who's going to get a big-time top 10 job in the near future. Tennessee tonight, though, JC, I like Hendon Hooker probably over/under touchdowns at like 4.5. He's going to have a big game. He'll probably play about the first series into the third quarter. Ball State coach, I listened to his presser on Tuesday, and he didn't sound all that confident going into Neyland. As a six touchdown underdog, I mean that's a game where you want to try to stay injury free if you're Tennessee and get to week 2 with a pretty big win.
Definitely, and I'm telling you this, that I know the Vols lost to Pitt last year, and so the perception is, well, they lost early, they're a different team. Pitt's good. Okay, I think that West Virginia, that'll be a heck of a game tonight with West Virginia. There's a lot of positivity about Keaton Slovis up there, and a lot of folks think they could repeat as ACC champs. There's a lot of talk about NC State, a lot of talk about Clemson, Miami, but then
what are your thoughts on NC State? I've kind of compared NC State to South Carolina over the years.
Yeah.
A lot of our listeners know that I live in Fayetteville, so I'm in Tar Heel, NC State country. But man, this seems like the year that it could really all come together if you're a Wolfpack fan.
It looks like it, and what's impressive to me about it, Brad, they've done it with mostly 3-star kids from North Carolina.
Yeah.
And they've evaluated really, really well. I remember 2017, and I remember that defense they had and how many draft picks they have on the front 7. Yeah. And they held the Gamecocks to 220 yards and lost, and they lost to Wake Forest and finished 8-4. But NC State is a popular pick. We actually have a listener that sent in his playoff picks, and he picked NC State to go to the playoff. So how about that?
I'm not quite that high, but they can get to the New Year's 6. That game at Clemson, though, man, is going to be really tough for State to win.
I would not bet against Dabo and that crowd in that game. I mean, they may end up winning at 10-3, but I think they can. I wouldn't bet against him. I wouldn't bet against him.
Georgia Clemson all over, right?
Yeah, exactly. So you think Georgia Tech will hang with Clemson or on Monday night?
So I'm looking forward to watching that game because I want to see how many snaps that Cade Klubnik takes.
Yeah.
Dabo has said all summer that, the quarterback rotation is going to be first team Uyunglele and the 5-star freshman is going to play. I think we all know, the writing's on the wall for DJ. If he doesn't play well the first couple of weeks of September, this is going to be Cade's offense. Brandon Streeter, Clemson's OC, said this week that, Cade's going to certainly play Monday night against Georgia Tech. Jeff Collins, man, he needs to win something this year.
Yeah,
he's on the hottest seat in the ACC, and for some reason, man, no one can win at Georgia Tech despite being in Atlanta with so many athletes at the high school level. I mean, I don't understand why Georgia Tech's not a better job than it is, and why people can't consistently win there.
Paul Johnson was so cavalier about recruiting, cavalier. He just. So basically, he left a roster that's a lot like the Citadel. And with his system, they were able to hang with anybody. Dude, they would go beat Florida State. They would always hang in the bounce. They go beat Florida State 49-45 and turn around and struggle with Jacksonville State, 42 to 35 or something like that. I mean, that's just how they rolled. Georgia Tech is too good of traditionally too good of a program, Brad, for me, in my opinion, to be that radical. You don't have to do that there.
Yeah.
Jeff Collins, good recruiter. The portals killed him, and I don't think he does himself any favors by doing things like not putting out a depth chart. And I was going
to say I actually watched the Georgia Tech Clemson game from last year yesterday afternoon, and every time Jahmyr Gibbs touched the ball, though, like Miles Murphy or somebody else was in his face. Like no wonder he left Georgia Tech for Bama. Now he's going to have actual holes to run through,
Yeah, I'm on the air. I'm on the radio in Tuscaloosa every Tuesday with Barry Sanderson and Wimp Sanderson, and I've said for a while that's my Heisman dark horse. I don't know if he's going to get enough touches to do it because they're deep at the running back and they're going to throw it all over the place. All right, anyway, we are up against it, Brad. We got another guest coming on, so unfortunately our time must come to an end.
Thank you guys, man.
Sad, man. But yeah, it's always great talking ball. We're going to have you on many times this season. Keep killing it with the content and stuff, man. It's always a great read and always a good talk. And next time we talk with you, the Gamecocks will have at least a game in the book. So it's always exciting this time of year.
Sounds good, fellas. Start the season 1-0.